A penguin grows tired of the cold winters in Alaska, so he buys a used Corvette and heads south for warmer weather. About 500 miles into the trip, the Corvette starts to overheat. He stops in a small town and finds a mechanic to get the issue fixed. The mechanic says he is not going to be able to look at the car for an hour, so the penguin asks him if there is any place to eat while he waits. The mechanic says there are great fish and chips right around the corner, so the penguin leaves and gets a nice lunch. An hour has passed and he heads back to the repair shop. The mechanic has the car on a lift, so the penguin asks the mechanic if he found the issue. The mechanic says, "It looks like you blew a seal." The penguin wipes the side of his mouth and says, "No, that's just tartar sauce." 1. A young woman on a flight from England asked the priest beside her, "Father, may I ask a favor?" "Of course, my child. What may I do for you?" "Well, I bought an expensive electronic hairdryer that is well over the customs limits, and I'm afraid they'll confiscate it. Is there any way you could carry it through customs for me? Under your robes, perhaps?" "I would love to help you, dear, but I must warn you, I will not lie," intones the priest. "With your honest face, Father, no one will question you," smiles the girl. When they got to customs, she let the priest go ahead of her. The official asked, "Father, do you have anything to declare?" "From the top of my head down to my waist, I have nothing to declare." The official thought this answer strange, so asked, "And what do you have to declare from your waist to the floor?" "I have a marvelous little instrument designed to be used on a woman, but which is, to date, unused." Roaring with laughter, the official said, "Go ahead, Father. Next." 2. A blonde walks into a small store and picks an item she wants to buy. She goes to the only cashier, who is also the manager of the place, and tells him, "How much is this hairdryer?" The cashier replies, "This is not for sale." The blonde returns the item and leaves. The next day she comes back, picks up the same item, which she really wants, and goes to the same only cashier. Blonde girl, "How much is this hairdryer?" The cashier replies, "You are the same girl as yesterday. This is not for sale." The blonde girl leaves huffing and puffing. She insists that she gets that item, so she buys a wig, dyes her hair red, puts on makeup, and comes to the same shop in a week. The girl finds the item, and while in complete disguise, approaches the cashier and asks, "How much is this hairdryer?" The cashier replies, "You are the same girl from last week. This is not for sale." The blonde girl finally explodes in anger and shouts at the cashier, "How did you know it was me?" The cashier replies, "Well, that is easy. This is not a hairdryer, it is a power drill." Elves. 3. Two ants had an arrangement to meet every winter in Miami for a vacation. Last year, when one ant got to Miami, he was shivering and shaking. The other ant asked him, "Why are you shaking so badly?" The first ant says, "I rode down here from New Jersey in the mustache of a guy on a Harley." The other ant says, "That's the worst way to travel. Do what I do. Go to the New Jersey airport bar. Have a few drinks. While there, look for a nice stewardess, crawl up her leg, and nestle in where it's warm and cozy. It's the best way to travel that I can think of." The first ant thanks the second ant and says he will give it a try next winter. A year goes by. When the first ant shows up in Miami, he starts shivering and shaking again. The second ant says, "Didn't you try what I told you?" "Yes," says the first ant. "I did exactly what you said. I went to the New Jersey airport bar. I had a few drinks. Finally, this nice young stewardess came in. I crawled right up to her warm, cozy spot. It was so nice and warm that I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was back in the mustache of a guy on a Harley." 4. A young First Nations chief in Canada has just taken over leadership of his tribe and wants to do the very best for his people. Since it is autumn, he tells them they should gather firewood for the coming winter, so they start to do that. But the young chief still has doubts. What if they don't stockpile enough? He decides to call Environment Canada to see what their winter forecast is. The meteorologist who answers the phone tells him, "Our indications are it will be a very cold winter." The young chief is concerned, so he counsels his people to gather even more wood, which they do. The young chief is still worried, though, so he calls back Environment Canada to verify the winter forecast. The meteorologist tells him, "We've just updated the winter forecast. It's going to be colder than usual. A very, very cold winter." Now, thoroughly alarmed, the chief issues an important directive to his people. It is going to be a severe winter, so gather and stockpile as much wood as possible. The whole tribe springs into action and puts in the maximum effort to collect firewood. The poor young chief is nearly beside himself with worry for his people, so he calls Environment Canada one more time, hoping for some better news. "I'm sorry, but it looks like this will be the worst winter on record," the meteorologist tells him. Despairing, but kind of curious, the young chief asks the meteorologist, "How do you know this?" The meteorologist answers, "Well, the weather data is a bit unclear, but the First Nations people are gathering firewood like crazy." 5. A man is working out with a blonde nearby. He gets hot while doing his set, so he takes off his shirt. The blonde winks and says, "Wow, you've got some nice pecs there." The man smirks and says, "100 pounds of pure dynamite, babe," and returns to his workout. A few minutes go by and he gets hotter, so he takes off his pants. The blonde winks again and says, "Wow, you've got some nice calves, too." The man smiles and says, "100 pounds of pure dynamite, babe," and returns to his workout. After another few minutes, he gets so hot that he takes off his underwear. With no hesitation, the blonde screams and runs away. The man chased her down, and when he caught up to her, he asked, "What was that all about? Why did you run away from me like that?" Blonde says, "I was afraid to be around all that dynamite when I saw how short the fuse was." 6. A husband and wife were having dinner. They were at a very fine restaurant when this absolutely stunning young woman came over to their table, gave the husband a big kiss, said she'd see him later, and walked away. His wife glares at him and says, "Who the was that?" "Oh," replies the husband, "she's my mistress." "Well, that's the last straw," says the wife. "I've had enough. I want a divorce." "I can understand that," replies her husband. "But remember, if we get a divorce, it will mean no more shopping trips to Paris, no more wintering in Barbados, no more summers in Tuscany, no more Infinities and Lexuses in the garage, and no more yacht clubs. But the decision is yours." Just then, a mutual friend enters the restaurant with a gorgeous baby on his arm. "Who's that woman with Jim?" asks the wife. "That's his mistress," says her husband. "Ours is prettier," she replies. 7. A man seeks cover in a cabin from the winter storm. Very NSFW. All right, so this is a story from Norway. It is a dark night in the winter. A small cabin is barely visible through the snowdrift. A lone man, the cabin owner, sits in front of the fireplace. What little light there is comes from the fireplace and a few dim candles. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. In enters a man, half frozen to death by the cold and the wind. In tradition with the local rules of the mountain, the guest is offered dry clothes and a hot meal. Hours pass and bedtime is approaching. The cabin owner has to guard the fire, so the guest is offered his bed in the bedroom. With strict instructions not to bother his wife, who's resting in a different bed in the same room. The next morning, the two are having breakfast. Suddenly, the cabin owner stares sternly at the guest. "You did bother my wife, didn't you?" asks the cabin owner. The guest responds, No, no, absolutely not. For a brief moment, the cabin owner settles down before he again cries out, Yes, yes, you did bother my wife. All right, yes, yes, I did, admits the guest. But how can you tell? He asks the cabin owner. A few dead, quiet seconds pass. Then the cabin owner responds, Well, she's been dead for 6 weeks, and you have larvae in your beard. Eight. Little Johnny's next-door neighbor has just welcomed a new baby into the world. Unfortunately, the baby was born without any ears. When the neighbors finally bring the baby home from the hospital, they invite little Johnny's family over to see their precious new arrival. Before heading over, little Johnny's dad sits him down for a serious talk. Now listen, son, he begins. The neighbor's baby was born without any ears. I don't want to hear a single word from you about it. Not one word. If you so much as mention his ears, you're going to be in big trouble when we get back home. Do you understand me? Little Johnny nods earnestly. Yes, Dad. Feeling somewhat reassured, the family heads over to the neighbor's house. When they arrive, they're greeted warmly, and soon enough, they're led to the nursery to meet the new baby. Little Johnny, determined to keep his promise, carefully leans over the crib, studying the baby with a thoughtful expression. He gently touches the baby's tiny hand and says with genuine admiration, Oh, what a beautiful little baby you have here. The baby's mother beams with pride and gratitude. Thank you so much, little Johnny, she says, clearly touched by his kind words. Little Johnny continues, This baby has the most perfect little hands and the cutest little feet. And those eyes, just look at those bright, pretty little eyes. Did the doctor say anything about how well he can see? The mother, glowing with pride, responds, Why, yes, the doctor said he has perfect eyesight. Little Johnny, still gazing at the baby, nods thoughtfully and then says, Well, it's a good thing, 'cause he sure can't wear glasses. 9. When I was learning to drive in the winter, my dad told me, if you're ever lost in the snow, wait for a plow truck, then follow it. One cold, snowy Minnesota night, I got lost on the way home. The snow was blowing so fast and piling up so high I couldn't see any street signs. With no map in my car and a dead cell phone, I thought I might be stranded, so I pulled over to the side of the road. Then, breaking through the flurries, I saw the headlights of a plow truck in my rearview mirror. Thanking my lucky stars, I turned in and followed the truck, hopeful that it would lead me back somewhere I recognized. I followed that truck for what felt like hours. He turned left, I'd turn left. He'd swing to the right, and I was right on his tail. After a while, I saw brake lights from the plow, followed by four-way flashers. The plow had stopped, and I saw the driver get out and approach my car. I rolled down the window to talk to him. Why are you following me, kid? The plow driver asked. Well, sir, my dad told me if I was ever lost in a snowstorm, I should wait for a plow truck and then follow it. Well, said the plow driver, I just finished clearing the Target parking lot. Want to follow me over to Best Buy?